All right, all you positive heads. On this week's Soul Share episode, I'm very excited to have my friend Summer McStravick back here with me on the show. Summer is a personal growth coach, author, podcaster, and creator of Flowdreaming, a mind body technique for manifesting and growing inner emotional strength. Hey there, Summer. Welcome back to the show, my friend.
Hi, Brandon. Thank you. I'm glad to see your face again.
It was episode 908, and we're in the 2000s now. Episode
Oof.
908 in 2019 that you were on. So it's been a minute. Um,
Yeah.
so I'm excited to hear and catch up with you. What's been the latest and greatest since I last talked to you. And I like to ask these my cliche opening and closing questions. And I'm curious now. I'm getting into some who have. I think by 2019, I was already asking these. So it's curious. I'm always curious to ask again and then listen back and see if they've changed because, we change. So my cliche opener is this. You're in an elevator. The woman next to you looks over, says, "What's your passion?" You got 10 floors to answer. What do you say?
10 floors. Well, how fast is this elevator going? That's
Yeah,
what I would say.
that's a good answer. That's a good answer.
Passions. Oh my God. I think the wonderful thing about living is that you get to change your passions every so often.
Yeah.
You kind of wear through them like, grooves on a record. Time to get a new record. You
Yeah.
listen to the same one. So my current passion has been writing. I mean, personally, I've really reached a point in my life where I feel like I've been cultivating a lot of knowledge over the last couple decades. And if I don't get it down into words, it's just going to float away. When I go, it'll go.
You're right.
Um,
Right.
and I've been writing a lot about reinvention and pivoting and
Mm,
relationship, with yourself and the universe.
I like that. I like that. That's definitely
So I'm
something
up to
that
floor
feels.
7 by now here.
Yeah, right. Oh, you're in the very slow creeping elevator. One of
I'm
those
in the
old
I'm in, I'm in the
1920s
old
buildings.
1930s one.
Yeah, right. That's funny. Oh man. Well, yeah, I'd love for you to just share a little bit for those who are hearing for the first time. Like I said, some people heard the episode probably all those years ago, but if you could just share a little bit of your backstory to give people context for who you are and what you do, how you got
Oh
here.
yeah. Yeah, you bet. And I won't go on too long because there is a lot of backstory.
Yeah.
I've had a very serendipitous life. I originally decided that I was not going to be like my family at all, as most teenagers do. Um, and my family is very much on the woo-woo scale, going back,
Yep.
generations.
I
My
know your
mom, my
mother.
grandmother. Yes, exactly. All the way back, multi-generations. And so I said, I'm going to go to college and I'm going to go into literature and publishing. So that's how I set off. Little did I know that life, your guidance, your higher being, it's always going to just let you wander and then nudge you when it needs to, as you do with any good teenager. So I ended up working for a huge publishing house in the mind body spirit field, quite by accident. Literally by accident, just a random form letter basically that I had sent them one day. And from there, I guess I began my MBA. That's what I like to say, in what it's like to talk with people, lead people, understand things. And that's when my gift of flow dreaming started to emerge to the world, the one that I kind of had kept private until then. Ended up, creating, some people remember this if you're old enough, Hay House Radio.
Hmm.
Um, Partnered
Yeah.
with Wayne Dyer for many years on our program
Wow.
together, our show together.
I love Wayne.
Louise was my boss, Louise Hay. So that's the little stellar background. At the time, I had no intention of ever leaving, ever doing anything else. It was like a beautiful, peak period.
Right.
But things change, right? Things change. Flow Dreaming got out there. Flow Dreaming took off. And before I knew it, I was devoting myself to spreading the word of the practice and the philosophy full time. And ever since, that's what I've been doing. So I have
Yeah.
my own company now and write my own books and do a bunch of fun things.
Very
That's the
cool.
nutshell, though.
What a cool path. I kind of forgot that. I mean, as soon as you said it, I remembered, but that
Yeah.
you were, so you co-hosted the show with Wayne.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
Wow.
developed it, produced it, co-hosted it.
Wow.
It was pretty fun. We got a little routine going where I would be like his bantering partner.
Yeah.
Every so often trying to ask a good salient question,
Yeah.
but
Right. Right. Right.
kind of smoothing the bumps through the show. But just being able to talk with him for an hour a week for like 5 or 6 years, you learn a lot. You
Yeah.
learn a lot. Um,
Yeah. I had to what's her name? A woman who claims to channel Wayne,
oh,
and and
you know,
and talks to her. His one of his daughters or something is
mhm,
involved. I forget exactly. My memory.
yeah.
By the way, guys, if I sound a little wobbly today, give me some leeway because I am 5.5 days as we speak into a water fast. So yeah, it's quite a journey. And one thing I can tell is my heart rate is definitely slowed down. Everything, I'm moving much slower than normal, and so yeah, just a little disclaimer there. But
I've already been teasing you about that brand, and I'll pull you back
yeah,
on
I
focus if we
know
have to.
you've been taunting me with your delicious
Ta-
coffee.
Taunting you with my organic blend.
Well, I have my organic alive water, it's called.
I was going to say you're very purified water.
Yeah, it's
Um,
it's it's really good water. Actually, it comes from a place. This guy goes around. He went around. The story is he went around and he found like the perfect spring water. Like I think it comes from somewhere in Oregon that it's like deep in the earth. It hasn't been contaminated by any groundwater. There's no,
wow.
all has all the natural mineralization and stuff in it, and so they call it
Yeah.
alive water. And it's interesting. At least when he was first selling it years back, he had to say it's not for human consumption because it hasn't been sterilized, and
Oh, yeah.
but meanwhile
Straight
if you
from the
test it,
earth.
it's like exactly the brew you'd want.
Pure.
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah, super pure. But it's pretty funny thing how our world works. If you kill everything in it, then it's good, and if it's naturally how it's supposed to be, then no, you can't drink it.
Do
But
not get me going on the state of the world. That will take
mm,
this conversation in such
yeah,
another
let's not
direction.
even go there, huh? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah,
Anyway.
there's so many things that we could talk about, and one of the things I think it's a good place to start, since it's sort of your calling card, flow dreaming.
Yeah.
If you could share with the audience and remind me, I know we've talked about in the past what flow dreaming is and how it works.
Yeah. So, like I already kind of revealed, I ended up writing a book about flow dreaming. I did a podcast called, I have a podcast still, 19 years in, called
Wow,
Flow Dreaming.
19 years.
Brandon, I'm one of
Wow.
the
I thought
OG
I was
podcasters.
OG. But
Ooh,
I'm a newbie. I'm almost at 9 years, and
you've done more
you got me beat
episodes
by
than
a
me.
decade. You got me beat by a decade, but I'm crazy enough that I did more episodes. Okay, cool, fair.
It's weird though. Like, I'm so tempted always to try to take down those early episodes because you actually get to see, it's almost like a video diary or an audio diary. You
Yeah,
get to hear a person evolve, change their thinking,
yeah,
the things they're interested in. And I always say it's like watching baby Summer grow up,
yeah.
you
Right,
know.
right.
And it's embarrassing. You kind of cringe a little and you hear some of her
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
statements, back from 18 years ago.
yeah, yeah.
But I
Right.
think, God,
That's
just lay
part
it
of it.
out there. Just show it. So,
It's like those old pictures. You look back and you're like, "What was I thinking? What am I wearing? What?" Yeah,
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So to go back to flow dreaming, it had been a practice that I had been doing, mostly with my mom. We would do it together, and back in the day, again, the original forms of manifesting. There was Louise's "Do Your Affirmations," in the mirror, do your self talk, your mirror talk. There were Jerry Nestor Hicks were just starting to go around in the mid and late 80s, and it was about being in the zone, being in the vortex, being in that state.
yep.
um, but a lot of the information that was out there was, or creative visualization. Okay, I could name a few.
Yeah, Wayne,
But
I'm sure chimed in
oh,
on that a
of
lot, right?
course. Power of intention.
Yep.
um, but a lot of them had to do with keeping your thoughts, keeping yourself in the right place, in the right state of vibration, in the right state of being as often as you could. And I remember, having like, a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old and running off to work every day and, leaving the house at 6 in the morning and getting home at 6:30 or 7 at night. And just thinking, I have not had my head in the right space, like for anything manifestational, I'm just dealing. I thought, there's got to be something I can do that's like a big mega vitamin pill for my manifesting, something where I can really feel that I'm being heard. And like I said, I had been doing this technique with my mom, practicing and not really understanding it. And I won't go into that whole story, but eventually I realized that what was going on was kind of a combination of 3 elements that when they happen together, it's like 1 + 1 = 4. When they happen together, something bigger was actually going on. So the 3 elements of flow dreaming are guided daydreaming. So I sometimes describe flow dreaming as kind of like meditation because everybody knows meditation and it's easy to kind of gulp that down. But in effect, it's more like an energy or in energetic practice. Um, it's more like daydreaming, imagining, just moving into that state, letting go, releasing. You can visualize if you want to. You can see things or say things if you want to. But the next most important pillar is deep, strong, fluid, flowing emotion. And I think that's what takes it into another realm. And in later years, I've started to describe flow dreaming for some people, particularly my therapists and my doctors and people like that. I call it emotional reconditioning. You're going to practice certain emotional states. You're going to practice them over and over. You're going to call them up on demand. You're going to become them. And then you're going to let life start reorienting, readjusting itself to what you're creating, what you're putting out. So the third pillar is flow itself. And back again in the day, flow was obviously it was pioneered by Dr. Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. And he's sometimes called the father of positive psychology.
Hmm.
He created flow, or not created, discovered it in terms of the scientist that has the breakthrough, the person who's working, studying so hard, and then has the aha, that zone of complete heightened attention, heightened awareness. Certain characteristics, you forget how much time is passing. You forget that you haven't gotten up in 4 hours. You've been so engrossed. It's almost like a super alignment. However, my thought was, gosh, what if I get into that state, but instead of working on a thing around me, a physical thing, what if I try to get into that state in a kind of connected space,
Mm-hmm.
right? A space with my higher self, a space with life. Um, what if I do that? So I thought, well, how do I get there? And that's where the daydreaming, I'm like, well, just going to imagine myself going in there because that's how I was doing it anyway.
Yeah.
So I get into this flow state and I'm daydreaming. And then I'm like, what do I do here? like now what? And that's where the emotion ended up coming in. So you enter the state of incredibly powerful alignment, or I call it flow state.
Mm-hmm.
And then you begin having a discussion, right? You have a communication. You begin shifting and changing yourself. You start showing life and your future who you are from this emotional standpoint. And I like to say it is a manifestational practice. It's also healing. It does so many other things because most of us are so used to waiting for life to give us permission to feel certain ways. If this happens, then I can feel like that. If I get my mortgage paid, then I'll feel safe.
Yeah.
If that person falls in love with me, then I can feel love. And we wait so much. I look at the world around us, and sometimes I just see all these power leaks, is what I call them.
Yeah.
All these things we're waiting on to get the feelings that we want. This has to happen before I can have. And I say, what if we reverse that equation completely? What if I happen and then the world is challenged to line up the things that will match it instead of
Yeah.
me trying to match the world? So those
Right.
are some fundamental basics of flow dreaming, essentially,
Yeah.
and why I do it, how I do it.
Amazing. Yeah. I love how thorough it is. I mean, what you just said there at the end really reminds me of Neil Donald Walsh in Conversations with God talks about, the be, do, have paradigm. Most people, or do be, have, do have be versus be, do, have. And
Mhm.
most people do something like work in order to have something like money, in order to be something like happy. And really, the
Yeah,
way it should work and does work is be something like happy, and you'll find yourself doing and having the things that reflect that, right?
precisely. And you're right. So many teachers, we end up at the end of the day, we're preaching some of the same messages because they're
100%.
universal messages.
Yeah,
It's just
right.
what teacher speaks your language,
And
who do you hear the best?
what
Yeah,
flavor you can receive of ice cream you like. But at the end of the day, it's
yeah.
all cream and sugar and like the same ingredients under there.
Oh, I can tell you're fasting.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. Oh
All
gosh,
right, second food reference in this hour.
don't get me thinking about ice cream. Ugh. Uh, so, um, one of the things that you mentioned and that we talked about beforehand a little bit that I'm really curious to hear you talk about is, you know, how to reinvent yourself, how to climb out. What do people do who are feeling purposeless, or you feeling the call to become the next greatest grandest version of yourself? You want to reinvent yourself. You don't quite know what direction to go.
Yeah.
Yeah, really curious to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, that's become again my one of my latest passions to go back to the beginning.
Yep.
Over the last couple of years, boy, so many people got just gobsmacked by life,
Yeah.
everything turning upside down. We're living in an upside down world recently, and
Yeah.
it's caused a lot of us, I think, to slide to a stop, come to a halt, whether we wanted to or not. And then we had to kind of relight ourselves. We have to like relight the wick, get the sputter of the engine going again. And many of us realized, I don't even know where I want to go now. Like
Yep.
when you're so busy and life was
Yep.
so, rolling constantly until the world stopped. And we all took a collective breath. And instead of having, all the outside things to distract us, the entire world was left with themselves, literally inside their own apartments, but more so inside their own beings. And very few people, I think, have recognized that this kind of universal going inward that every single human had to do
Yeah.
for quite a while.
Yeah.
Once they went in there and stopped and saw, like, and once you stop running, you realize, dang, I'm tired. So we all realized we're tired. And what are we running toward? Where do I
Right.
want to go? This really, for me, sparked this sense of, yeah, where do you want to go? What do you want to have happen? And so
Yeah.
I began thinking, all the times in my life that I've reinvented myself. And I realized this isn't the first one. This is more like the fourth, maybe the fifth. And I
Yeah.
thought, why does it kind of get harder the more you do it and the older you get? Shouldn't it be getting easier by now?
Yeah.
And I realized, well, we build up a kind of resistance to this evolution of ourselves. We all, especially in personal growth, we talk about, growth, right? I want to evolve. But when it comes right down to it, the big things that evolve us, we often get a little more gun shy, a little more gun shy. The older we get, the more that's on the
Yeah.
line, right?
Right.
Because think you were 20, you had maybe a car payment.
Yeah.
Probably you weren't paying rent, and if you were, it was you were giving a few bucks to a friend whose house you were
Yeah.
staying at.
Right. Right. Right.
You got a job and you're like, oh, this isn't going to be my career. However, 4 years in, 5 years in, 8 years in, you're like, oh, I guess it's my career now. We
Right.
just kind of fell into things.
Right.
And the things naturally, generally kind of worked until we got more things locked down and more ideas about the milestones we wanted to hit, have the family or have the partner or, get a real house or, oh my gosh, now I need to start saving for retirement. Um, we start knocking these things off the list. Yet life is like, we're not done reinventing you. What, you think you want to just stay there where you are?
Yeah.
No, you're not going to get that opportunity. You're going to keep moving into more experiences.
Hmm.
So for me, I realized I needed to really grasp how to move through a reinvention with that kind of wide open arm feeling that I had when I was 20. And what was getting in the way of that? A whole lot of fear, a whole lot of doubt, a whole lot of, but what if it doesn't work? It hasn't worked before. I don't want to feel those particular emotions. And so many of us have taken a longer time to emerge than we would have at other points in our life.
Yeah.
So I've been focused on how do we emerge out there. And again, this is going to go right back into flow dreaming. And I'll tell people like one way of looking at things that I think can help change a lot. Um, the way that you come back out again, or the way you figure out where you are, what you want. And for some of us, we don't even have the want, right? We're so, I call it emotionally flatlined. I'm like, that's okay. Your next step is just to recapture your emotion. But in the world of flow and the philosophy of flow dreaming, um, there's something that I call an energetic blueprint. So if we look at our lives, we often have these physical blueprints like an architect, to build a house. We're like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, we're going to build this here, going to build that there. I'm going to work here. I'm going to have that partner. I'm going to do this thing. We have this series of physical stuff that we create around us and levels of success that we want to reach. Even if that level of success is, I just want to travel around the world and not be beholden to anybody, that's still something you're doing.
Right.
Well, everything in life has, an opposite to it, right? The yin and the yang. So if you think about the yang as all the physical work that you're doing, what about the yin? What's going on there? So I call that the energetic blueprint for our life. Your
Mm.
life needs to hear both from you. It needs to have what I call action, which is the physical, and pre-action, which is the yin or the
Mm.
non-physical or the energy blueprint. I'm like, can you sketch that for me? How does your life feel? If you had to communicate to the universe every single day, this is what my life should feel like. And all the things that I create should fit into those feelings, should uphold those feelings, should advance those feelings. So when I'm creating this energy blueprint for myself, where I'm going into flow and what I call these emotional endpoints, I have a whole language built around this at this point. Um, what I'm really saying is, I feel exquisitely reinvented. For instance, this is something I might do as I'm flowing. The feelings of this reinvention are phenomenal. I am at the best place I've ever been. This decade coming up is the best decade I'll have ever had. I feel such sweetness, such rejuvenation. I feel such desire and passion. I feel so alive, more than I've ever. Right? And you can already hear other things are creeping in, like, yeah, but how are you going to do that? Yeah, but it's not looking
Mm-hmm.
like that now. Yeah, but you don't even know. Like, that doesn't matter. You don't need to feel those things. You don't want to tell the universe those things.
Yeah.
Tell it how you actually want to be.
Yeah.
Now you're really sketching the blueprint, and you can get detailed. I want to feel that way in my career. I want to
Yeah.
feel that way with my money. I want to feel that way with my partnerships and friendships. Right? You can drill down. But I've got these two things now. I've got this physical set of things I'm doing and this non-physical set of information that I'm constantly saying, all right, you guys got to work together. My job is to make sure that this non-physical blueprint is encoded, crystal clear, and I'm going to practice it. I'm not just doing it one time in a journal. I'm feeling it
Yeah.
every single day.
Yeah.
Every single day. That's my flow dreaming.
Beautiful.
So
Beautiful.
that's something people can start practicing now, to think about what's in my blueprint. And then once you start to play with that, you realize, okay, I need to take some action.
Yeah.
And even if you don't know what that action is, take any action.
Yeah.
Like,
Do you think that's doing something versus maybe waiting for inspired action? I mean, do you think it's
oh, good
better
question.
to, yeah, curious.
So I'm a huge fan of inspired action. When it comes, you grab it, you roll with it.
Yeah.
However,
That's a no-brainer.
sometimes, yeah, duh, right? But sometimes it's just not there. And what I see happening is people just stepping back and waiting. And they're like, the universe will tell me, life will tell me. I'm like, okay, but I want you to be engaged. Remember, it's 50-50. It's like a
Yeah.
person hopping on one foot versus a person who's using both feet and running. Action, pre-action, physical stuff, guidance stuff. So if you're finding yourself sitting and nothing is happening, it's sort of like you're holding the tennis ball in your hand and waiting for the other person to serve it to you.
Yeah.
Eventually you go, oh, I need to give you some action.
Yeah.
So that's when I say, any action, as long as it feels moderately okay, because your
Mm-hmm.
emotions are incredible guides. If the action feels stinky doo-doo, you hate it, you don't want to do it, please don't
Yeah.
do it.
Yeah.
But if it's like, yeah, it's probably not the best thing, but sure, I'll take that job for now. I'm like, great. They're like, but I don't really want this job, but it's not the worst thing. I'm like, okay, you know what you're doing? You're taking and you're giving the universe a new set of circumstances. You're creating a move on the chessboard that's going to reset all the other pieces. Life has not been able to literally insert the things that you want because you've been holding your life in this static place. You take some action, everything resets. Great. Now you've got more action to pick from, more action you can choose from. Let's keep doing action until the right set of cards comes down. It's sort of like when you play cards, you got to get rid of some of them. You
Yeah.
know, that's what you're doing. You're getting rid of stuff when you're doing action. That's the only way you're going to get those cards that you want.
Hmm. Interesting.
So,
Yeah. That's an interesting perspective on it. And yeah, it makes sense. Like, yeah, finding the most inspired thing you can. If it's not incredibly inspiring, if there's some level of inspiration there, then it's
yeah,
it's 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 starting the
right.
ball rolling, right?
It's really easy to tell too, because your emotions are your signposts. Sometimes people are like, I hate fear and pain and doubt and confusion. And I'm like, I don't like them either. They're definitely not I call them crayons in the box. They're not the colors I would typically use, and for me, they're like browns and olive grays and drab, beige. I like bright, sunny, hot pink and yellow and, bold sunset colors. But I'm like, but you know what? If you don't have the black crayon, you can't draw the night sky. You can't draw the stars.
Right.
So, if you get an emotion that says, uh-oh, don't, ooh, icky. I'm like, you should go, oh, thank you. Thank you so much. You just alerted me. That is not for me. Thank
Yeah.
you. God, you just prevented me from going off a cliff. Thank you. I'm so glad I had that emotion. Where we get in
Yeah.
trouble is when the emotion starts to be more like a siren, more like the fire alarm, that will randomly go
Right.
off in your kitchen. And you're like, when will this thing ever turn off? And it's like, I didn't ask for this.
Yeah.
When the emotion keeps going, and we can all just check in, like there's something right now everybody is feeling. You've had the same emotion about it, a yucky emotion for a while. Maybe it's a relationship with your mom or a situation going on at work. And it's the fire alarm. It's just been going and going and going. Your job with the fire alarm is to like turn the darn thing off, check the house for smoke, right? You do that, you got it. But we'll often sit in the emotion again because we're waiting for something else or someone else to do something, to change something so that we can feel how we want to feel.
Yeah.
So that's where the negative emotion starts to call it, just outwearing its welcome. Like, well, how do you want to feel instead? Let's start telling the universe that. Let's
Yeah.
program that in. Again, all part of flow dreaming. I do this work during my like literal 15-minute flow dreaming practice. Just
Right.
an intense 10-minute dive into this almost lost state. It's just like
Yeah.
daydreaming and you forget where you are. And then when I come out of it, I'm like, I think the universe really heard me.
Yeah. Right. 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 It's
Really felt
powerful.
me. Yeah.
Yeah. That's powerful. It's all about getting that emotional elevation, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So and your positive emotions are going to guide you as well. But like people often get stuck. Like, is this the right thing I should do? Should I
Yeah.
go in this direction? Like this goes right back to your question about reinvention. Is this the right thing? And I'm like, well, what are your feelings? My feelings are confusion. I'm like, okay. So confusion isn't really a negative don't go there thing. It's more like doubt in yourself, right? Is that something that you'd like to work through? Would you like to maybe understand what doubt means to you? Well, let's do some action and see what it means. Let's go find out. Let's go chase after this one. Because
Yeah.
sometimes we're brought these feelings because, again, we want to evolve and change. And it doesn't mean cutting out every negative feeling or experience from your life. Unfortunately, I know everybody wants that, but those
Right.
negative experiences help you
They're
understand what those
necessary.
feelings are and master them, like master them. So,
Yeah. It's a barometer, right? It's letting you know when you're out
mhm,
of alignment and what's
yeah,
how to course correct. So it's that contrast
totally.
is essential.
Yes. That really brings in the question too of resistance. That's another question I get a lot from my own students.
Hmm.
Um, when is resistance meaning stop, and when is resistance meaning you really should go there and go through this and overcome this? You need
Mm.
this.
Yeah, good
It's
question.
And again, sometimes we stall out there like, okay, I'm trying to do this thing. Life keeps, whacking me and batting me away from it. I feel like the universe doesn't want me to do this. What's going on? And I'll say, okay, again, you can move towards something. You can have a goal. Like, what's your emotional endpoint? Well, my emotional endpoint is, let's use relationships. I really want to feel deeply loved and adored and cherished by a partner. But every time one, there's no one in my life, or I keep getting the same kind of person, I just feel like, I don't know, maybe God doesn't want me to be with anybody in this life. Like, I'll hear that and I'll be like, wait a second. Why would the universe say, oh, there are things you cannot have?
Right.
There are things you are not allowed to have. I mean, if I was a parent with a child, I would only do that with things like dynamite, matches, poison, you know.
Right.
If I'm really in this beautiful relationship with growth, it's like, oh, you want to experience that? Of course. Like, any loving parent would be like, of course I want you to experience. Oh, you're interested in music? You want to take dance lessons? Yes, I'm going to do whatever I can to give you that.
Yeah.
So I always feel like it's there for you, but you're getting this resistance, right? So you can continue having that feeling, but maybe there are certain things you've been doing, certain paths you've been taking that really aren't working. And you're getting negative emotion as a result of those paths. Like, get off Tinder right now. That's definitely not working for you. The last 5 dates were terrible. That's not your thing. So the path can be, again, this is with the thought about flow. Imagine there's always a flowing river. There's always a path of least resistance. There's always water cruising down the mountain to the sea, and it's going to go around every boulder. It's going to take the path of least energy expenditure, if you want to kind of get a little sciencey about this. You also have a path in your life of least energy expenditure for the biggest result, for the right direction. And I say, that's the feeling I always want us to go back into again and again. And we sometimes call that alignment, in our world. Like, what
Yeah.
is alignment? That's what alignment is, pure flow. So
Yeah.
I'm like, you can get into that state and you can say, I'm flowing for a partner. I'm feeling loved, adored, cherished. I want this. I'm full up with this. It is joyful. It is pleasurable. It happens so easily for me. It is right there at the right time. And things that work for me, I feel myself naturally and easily doing. Things that are not right are just gently distributed away from me, right? They are not in alignment with me. They can't stick to me because my flow is flowing right past them. Okay. Now the things that you hit that feel like resistance, you say, I'm getting a negative emotion. Does this feel like, it's life telling me no? Maybe life is telling you no. Right? It's the bumpers around the bumper car ride. You hit the bumper, life
Mm-hmm.
said, no, not that route. Do another one. So maybe the resistance though was inside. I'm afraid. I think I'm going to screw up. I'm going to be hurt again. I'm this. I don't know. I don't believe. There's something wrong. There's something broken in me or other people. I don't know. I'm like, okay, that resistance is not coming from the universe to you. That's your resistance going to the universe. You're the
Right.
only one who can get rid of that.
Right.
So that's an inner kind of resistance. It's also not saying stop. It's saying push through. And you start to play with this idea over time, and it starts to become more and more clear what kind you're facing. An outer resistance that needs you to just kind of be like, thanks a lot for that direction, guys. I'm going to get right back on my path, versus the inner resistance, which is, oh, well, that one you definitely have to just push through.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I know we're kind of deep diving into a lot
No,
of
it's
concepts
wonderful.
here,
Yeah,
but
yeah, it's wonderful. It's wonderful. And yeah, really just being able to just have some discernment around where it's coming from is super helpful, right?
yeah. Yeah.
Well, I know you always have a lot of fascinating concepts you break down into metaphor, and I'm curious. Can you tell me about the king and the queen metaphor that you speak about and how it relates to our head and our heart?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've been talking about emotion, right?
Mm-hmm.
And emotion, people generally recognize as coming from the heart, and intellect, thought, mind, they typically recognize as coming from your brain, your head. So taking that old, again, dichotomy of the king and the queen, this is totally not gender related, by the way. It's just a way of creating a parallel, it's like yin and yang, right?
Yep.
Um, if we recognize that the head is the king and the heart is the queen, you're supposed to have both ruling the castle. Again, this is
Right.
just like pre-action and action. Action is the king, pre-action is the queen, right?
Right.
So
Right. Right.
the
Right.
yang and the yin, right? So they're supposed to be ruling the castle equally, meaning our lives. What happens though is the king is always taken over, and the world recognizes the king more than the queen in our lives
Yep.
world today, right? It's
Yep.
all about science and intellect and thought, and it's not about feeling and what's right and what's good for us, and love and communication. Those are all in the queen's realm. King is
Yeah.
saying, I want to just keep you safe. I want to keep you safe. So I have this image of, you've got the queen and she's standing on the castle walls and she's looking out, and the hills are green and gorgeous, and there's a forest, and she can hear a merry band of people playing and dancing out there, and she's just like, oh, I want to run out of this castle and just go dance and explore. And the king's like, that's not a merry band, those are robbers, and they're gonna kill you, and you got to stay right in here. You better listen to me. I've got it all figured out. I'm going to keep you safe. You're going to stay at that job. You're going to stay in that relationship. You're going to save some money. You're going to lose some weight. You're going to, and the king is just like telling you constantly. And the queen says, you think you're protecting me in here? You think you're, keeping me safe from being hurt and possibly failing out there?
Yeah.
But you're actually killing me. I'm just dying inside this castle. So the queen at some point says, look, I'm going to go out of the castle. I'm going to lead for a while. I'm going to tell you what I need to experience to live, for us to live. And I don't want to say that the queen has the most power, but she's been really disempowered. And an exercise I like people to do, anybody right now can do this. Think about something in your life that you really remember, like you remember so strong. It's still just there. Maybe it chokes up your throat a little bit. It's what? Like, you can associate it with the thing. The king's
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, here are the people's faces. Here's the year it happened. But you know who's really holding that emotion? The queen. That's why it's still
Mm.
there. That's the biggest chunk of that memory. It's the
Mm.
feelings that it created in you.
Yeah.
And our decisions are likewise usually led by that. The day somebody wakes up and says, oh my God, I'm getting a divorce, that's the queen suddenly going, I'm leaving the castle.
Yeah.
So she makes the biggest decisions in our lives for us. And the queen just blubbers and gets mad about it, and then eventually comes around.
Yeah.
Like every big decision, what college you're going to go to, if you're going to have that second date, it's not like calculated. It's always this.
Yeah.
So I'm like,
Right.
let's learn to let this queen,
Mm.
come out. Let's cherish her. Let's build a little trust in her, because usually that's the biggest thing going on. We don't have any trust in our emotional guidance at all.
Mm.
So how are we going to build a life and blueprints for our emotional endpoints in our life if we don't even trust our emotions day to day?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's our queen.
I really love that. It's so profound to realize, it's really just, the head and the heart are constantly at odds, and it's really about understanding how to make sure each is in their own lane, and
Yeah.
when one is meant to lead and when the other is. And like you
Yeah.
said, the head has dominated, and really in times when it shouldn't, and that's what really gets us in trouble.
We need to be equal. We need to be equal in our ruling,
Yeah.
right? The queen needs to say things like, I want to feel a deep sense of safety and freedom in my life. And the king says, good, we will start a savings account.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
That's them working together, as
Right.
opposed to the
Right.
king
Right.
just saying, you better do this. And the queen's like, no, but I want to, blah, 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 blah. Right? They need to. And again, this goes back to that basic idea. People are, I call them, either you're more on the pre-action side or you're more on the action side. We're kind of built that way. A lot of
Yeah.
like A-game high performers, really successful people, are very much on the action side, because
Right.
somewhere along the way they realized, if I'm productive, If I do more, I'm going to get some rewards and goodies.
Yeah.
Their Achilles heel, though, is they get super burned out, they get stale, they lose passion. Like they just, that flame goes out.
Yeah.
The
Right.
pre-action people, they're great at saying, God, I can envision things. I can feel things. I know what I want so much. I keep telling life this. I keep feeling it so much. They're great on the pre-action. They created that blueprint. They know exactly what they want to have and be in life. Their Achilles heel is they're not stepping out their front door to do it, right? They're not taking the action. So they tend to be what we call our dreamers and our artists and, the people who are just being without resulting. So we all know which one we tend a little bit more toward. And once you figure that out, you kind of have to start building the other one in a bit. And you'll be surprised that such a big trust issue will come up for you. It's kind of like a
Mm.
relationship, right? With somebody else, but it's you. If you've ever had a relationship where your trust has been broken, you're going to discover this in yourself. Your emotional self is not going to be trusting your head. Like,
Yeah.
you tell me to do these things that never work out. I'm not going to listen to you anymore. We're not going to do anything, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Whereas your head's like, I followed you last time you had that big desire, and look what we did. We bought $2,000 worth of craft supplies that you never used, and then you felt guilty about it, and you wouldn't even donate them. And now they're in the garage. So these two have to get on the same page and
Yeah.
start saying, I trust you. I'm going to trust you again. Because if they don't, like, you're looking at the rest of your life.
Yeah. Right.
So you
Right.
got to repair that trust.
Without trust, you've got nothing really, which actually leads me to another question.
Okay.
Another concept you love is called the trifecta of trust, right?
Yeah.
Let's hear about that.
Yeah. Okay, we're dipping into all these little ideas here.
We're
Hopefully it's
getting deep into the summer realm.
yeah, the realm of summer flow.
Hmm.
Um so yeah, just jumping off on trust, right? There's trust of self, which I was just talking about. But I've over the years sort of recognized that there are three major areas. And this is going to go back to reinvention, interestingly enough. When our trust gets broken in any of these three areas, we tend to skid to a halt. Or we just try and cover it up and like ignore it, pretend it's not there and move on. Trust of self, just described. Trust of others, probably the most obvious. Um, I trust you to love me. I trust you to be kind to me. I trust you to be faithful to me. I trust you to be honest to me, the most basic level. But there are other forms of trust of others that maybe aren't so obvious. I trust that the people in my workplace will see and recognize my value. Right? Most of us don't think about that. We just know that our job is really rough and we don't like our boss and they don't like us. And I trust that that the way that I'm bringing up my children is as powerful and as good as I can do, and that we are in a loving relationship. Like maybe we have that kind of doubt. Maybe that's a little trust that needs to be strengthened in ourselves and our relation to others.
Mm.
Trust of the universe, though, I think is one of the biggies, because we often don't realize that when or how that actually gets broken. Um, we say we believe in source and God and the universe and all that, but I find instead that we do this thing called cherry picking, which is the person in the grocery store who takes the good strawberry out of the basket
Right.
and puts it extra in and takes the moldy one and puts it over there. And you're like, don't do that. That's not how it's supposed to.
Right. Right.
Okay.
Right.
We say, I trust the universe. You love me and you've got all my best interests. Except, you know what? You have really screwed me over when it comes to my financial stability. I know
Yeah.
it's my fault, but it's also your fault
Right.
because I keep losing money. I bought that car. It turned out to be a lemon. I lost money on it. That apartment ended up being full of mold. And you start to think, God, universe, you know, I don't know if I trust you. I don't know if you're really going to bring me good things in all the areas.
Yeah.
Like I was saying earlier, like the partner. Like, but why wouldn't the universe bring you good things in all the areas? Why
Well,
wouldn't it?
what I think is, and just to interject, in my book, The Golden Key, one of the keys, there's 8 keys, is trust the mystery, and you know, I fully agree with this, and I think one of the things and ways that people fall off is they're judging what is good or bad, as if they
Uh-huh.
know what's best for them, right? I just saw a quote the other day that talked about if a man needs money for his growth, the universe will bring it to him without him doing anything practically.
Mhm.
If a man needs the lack of money for his to become his greatest and grandest self, then there's nothing that can be done to get it. Like it's so understanding that there's this bigger plan that you can't see, you can't perceive, that
Yeah.
you can have your aim and intention of where you want to go based off of your knowledge, insights, desires, etc. And
Yeah.
with a healthy sense of understanding and detachment, that and there's I'm playing checkers, my higher self is playing chess, and I'm not, there's good and bad. What is that?
Yeah.
Maybe if you had the thing that you thought you wanted so bad, it would have led you to, be at the fancy dinner because you had so much money on that night. And then you get, hit by someone who's a drunk driver or, whatever. You can't
Yeah.
know all
Mhm.
the things. And so I think that's an important part of tapping into this trust.
Yeah. One of the exercises I use with my students to really bring this home is I suggest that instead of thinking of the universe in the terms that many of us grew up with, more traditional terms like, God the Father or this sort of higher lower, I say, we're just going to do a thought experiment. I want you to pretend instead that the universe is actually your suitor. The universe is your partner. They feel that way about you. They don't care how many times you need to cry in their arms. They want to show you off to the world. They want you to meet all of their friends, all of their family.
Oh,
They think you are the most amazing thing. If you say, I need money, they're like, here, have some. I have plenty.
yeah.
It really changes it. And you start to realize, yeah,
Mm.
but I don't believe the universe will give me money, or I don't believe that they want me to be seen in the world, or I don't believe. But if you reposition it in your mind, you get a real
I
strong
like
sense
that.
of where I trust them and where I don't. Can you imagine having a relationship where you mostly trust them?
Yeah.
Except there's that one place where you don't. Like
Yeah.
it's like that relationship probably not going to go so great. You probably need
Yeah.
to go in there. So I'm always thinking about it in that term. Like, God, if this really were my husband, in my case,
Yeah. Right.
he'd be like, "Of course you can have that." The only time he'd say no is if he's like, "No, that's really dangerous. Don't do that."
Yeah. Right.
Otherwise, I want to see who you become. The more I
Yeah.
see of you, the more I adore you. So I'm going to
Yeah.
give you all the things for that.
I like that.
Anyway,
I really, that's very helpful um,
yeah.
lens to put on your relationship with source or
Yeah.
higher self.
By the way, a
Wow.
lot of this, I'll mention my book, your book, I love. The latest one I have is called Stuff Nobody Taught You. And it basically lays out a lot of these concepts. Like literally, I
Mm,
have a chapter called The King and the Queen, the
cool.
trifecta of trust, the universe is your suitor. So, I mean, if anybody's
Cool.
interested in going deeper in these ideas and the exercises, it's all there.
Yeah.
It's
And
a
of
good
course,
intro.
tuning into your podcast of 73 years, the world's longest running podcast.
Hey, man, I'm not 95
I'm not
yet.
that old.
I don't know what I look
Well,
like to you, Brandon.
your mother, who is awesome, has a podcast as well, right?
Yeah, it's called
Psychic
Dear
Explorers.
Venus.
I thought
The
Psychic Explorers. Oh,
Nah,
I'm
Dear
confusing.
Venus.
D Venus.
Yeah,
That's
no,
right. That's right.
Venus
That's right.
Andrick.
I'm confusing.
And she's
Y-
78 and she does readings and just basically
wow.
gives up all the goods about my life and everybody she knows. So people listen,
That's so
not
cool.
just to learn things, but to get all the inside gossip
Yeah.
on our
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
strange family.
Yeah. Wow. That's so cool.
Mm.
I love that. A 78-year-old podcaster still going strong.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Wow. Wow.
That'll be me
Well,
someday, hopefully.
yeah.
We'll see.
Well, yeah. Then, yeah, you would have had your podcast, what, a lot more
40
years.
years. I'm sure
Yeah.
there'll be
Wow.
something different by then. I can't imagine we'll all still be podcasting in 20
Yeah.
years,
Yeah.
but you never
Yeah.
know. There's
Never
still
know.
radio, right?
Yeah, that's right. It's simple and efficient, right?
Yeah.
So
I love podcasting because I get to whisper in people's ears. That's the way I
yeah,
feel it.
yeah.
It's
It's a really rewarding to be able to share and have your voice heard and know and to get feedback that it affects someone's life in a
yeah.
positive way. It's like,
Yes.
is the most rewarding thing that I've experienced in my life,
Yeah. Me too.
feels just so great. Well, as we start to wind down here, I'd love to shift gears a little bit. I love to ask for story time, a story of synchronicity or serendipity or a positive paranormal story or just something fun and inspiring. So certainly there's some fun. I mean, you raised with your mother. I got to think, who does readings at 78 on her podcast. You must have some stories up your sleeve.
Well, especially because we're recording this during spooky season. I don't know when it will air, but spooky season for me is October, right?
Yep, right.
I was at a very cool UFO convention over the summer. And I went to it for the first time because I just felt like I like to do things.
Desert?
Yeah, Contact in the Desert.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I love to do things that just expand my world. I knew nothing about any of this UFO stuff, you guys.
Yeah.
So I go there, and one of the speakers is a man who is talking about how, contact with quote, quote, extraterrestrials doesn't necessarily mean little green men. It can mean disembodied little green men. It can mean just other consciousnesses. That's what his consideration of ET was. And I thought, well, God, that's, now you're in my world. That's what I do. I'm always talking with other consciousness that is, not in a body. And he had a whole interesting lecture about out of body experiences. And I'm sitting there and I recognize, oh my God, I've had an out of body experience. And it took me like 30 years to figure this out.
Wow.
And I started thinking in my head, there's been 3 times I've experienced 3 miracles in life, 3 times. And no, getting over cancer was not one of them. I had to work my butt off to get through that.
Yeah.
The 3 times though that I was just quote saved, I always felt like because it was just the right time for me not to die.
Yeah.
The first time I was a little kid. You remember those, this is back, oh my God, back in the 70s. Oh, maybe you don't remember that. But they have these things where you hang upside down. You put your feet in the straps and you hang your head upside down and it's supposed to get your blood. It's like these little, I don't know, these. There was a trend going on where if you hung upside down, it was going to be good for you.
I was born in the 70s, but I remember the 80s as a child mostly.
Mostly. Well, my mom was giving a lecture on herbs because she's also a master herbalist. So I remember being at this bookstore and she was lecturing and they had one of these contraptions in the back. So I strapped my little legs in, flipped myself upside down and immediately went gunk like that. And the funny thing is, I actually found myself standing straight up. I didn't actually hit my head like I was supposed to. It was like I fell out of time for a minute. That's the only thing. And I told my mom after, and she just looked at me like, you what? Why were you in that thing? And but it stuck with me to this day. I'm like, how did I end up standing upright?
Yeah.
It was literally like being outside of time.
Is it like you were going to fall on your face? And
I felt myself falling like, right on my head.
Oh, wow.
And then I'm standing there.
Wow.
A weirdly similar thing happened years later. I was like 13 or 14. And I was leaving my house on an icy morning, where you just get a slick ice down the ramp.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I'm walking down this slick ramp and out go my feet. And I'm about to go down on my head again. Same darn thing. I'm standing.
What?
Yeah, no.
Wow, that's even wilder.
Kid you not. And I'm like, really? Again? Yeah, they're like, it's not your time to die yet. I'm like, you're kidding me.
Wow.
Third time. Okay, third time is very different. I had a really, really botched appendectomy. I had a misdiagnosis. I ended up with gangrene, peritonitis, perforation, full sepsis. It was really, really bad. And when they finally got me into surgery, I remember seeing myself and hearing the doctors talk. And when I woke up from anesthesia, I said, what's peritonitis? What's that? And the nurses are looking at me and they're like, how do you know this? And I said, I saw everything. I knew what was going on. And everyone again scratches their heads. And I've figured out that I was so scared. There was obviously some part of me that was watching or had left.
Wow.
And I just thought, it's an out of body experience. And I chalked it up to that. And later, to go back to this man speaking, He said, no, that was an out of body. That was a near death experience. That's what we consider to
Wow.
be a near death experience.
Wow.
And I went, well, turns out, went right back in. Guess it wasn't my turn yet.
Wow.
So there's a
Wow.
very long set of my three
I love
miracles.
those. Those are great shares.
My mom always says, the death comes for everybody. The train is always going to pull up to the station. You just don't know when or what your stop is.
Yeah.
So I'm very mindful of that the times that I've had near misses, they're supposed to be near misses.
Yeah.
And there'll be a time when it's not.
Yeah.
So I keep that in mind and try to live accordingly.
Yeah. What a blessing though, to get to experience that and come out the other side and share and inspire people that, and I have a lot of peace around the idea of like death, and it's like, whenever it's time, and we'll go on to what's next, and if you've got another appointment to get to, then you might leave. Right. So.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
So hopefully that's inspirational and sort of spooky, but also inspirational.
Yeah, I like it. No, that was good. That was good.
Yeah,
it was
just
very, very good.
Those little weird moments that, maybe that's why a lot of us are kind of believers. We've had moments like that, and other people may have dismissed their own set of moments, but we hang on and remember ours. And we're like, yeah, I believe all that regular stuff, but then there's this.
Yeah.
What is that? Like, I can't let go of that one.
That's like some spirit guide intervention, angelic intervention stories.
Oh, 100%. 100%. I have no other idea of what that was. So, yeah.
Fascinating. Well, thank you for sharing. And, I know people have thoroughly enjoyed this. What are the best ways for them to connect, follow your work, et cetera?
Definitely the podcast. It's called Flowdreaming, still kind of woo-woo. I hope you enjoy it. Also, I have a website, flowdreaming.com. And Flowdreaming, by the way, is with an F, not an S. F like Frank. You can find, I have hundreds of flow dreams there. These activations, these energy experiences that help you create the blueprint. People can browse through them. I have courses. There's way too much there, to be honest, but there's a lot people can dive into. Lastly, I have an app. So if you open your phone, you can find Flow Dreaming. It's basically a shop that allows you to like listen to the different things you want to start co-creating, get the flow dreams around them, create your own playlists, and just go. So I'd say those are my top ones. And, my books are pretty darn good too. If I do say so myself.
Yes. And you have one that's about to come out, right? The one you mentioned, things people don't tell you.
Nobody taught you just came out. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Flow Dreaming, the original, it's super old. Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So got a bunch of them. Go to Amazon, wherever.
Perfect. Well, I do have one final question to ask you, my cliche closer, and it is this. In 60 seconds or less, what is the meaning of life, according to Summer McStravick?
This will go deep with me, but it's all of consciousness in the universe gaining a greater awareness of itself through experience, both physical and non-physical. Bada boom.
Love that. Love it. Well, you are such an inspiration, Summer. Thank you so much for taking the time to come and share your wisdom again. And I look forward to us circling around again in the near future.
Thanks, Brandon. So wonderful. And by the way, everybody, I have a great interview with you as well that they should look up on my podcast. I know.
That's right.
Go check it out.
All right, folks. Thank you yet again for tuning in your beautiful brainwaves and incredible heart, your king and queen. And until next time, journey well.